Hi, I'm Kevin Eikenberry, and I'm here to help you reach your potential as a leader and a human being. Welcome to Remarkable TV and the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, so glad you're here. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes, because this is part of a series. Today, we're talking about 2 things to never do in your presentation. Are you ready? Let's get started. This is the next in a series about presentation skills. There have been several before. There are several more to come. So like I said, make sure you subscribe so you can go back and listen or watch. If you're on the podcast and this is the first you've heard, you can go back at remarkablepodcast.com or on your podcast app to find the past episodes. Hope you'll do that. Today we're talking about things to never do. And these are things that you've seen done lots of times, but they don't work. One of them you likely know doesn't work. The other one, maybe not. Here they are. Number 1, you've seen this and you know it's not good, and yet people still do it. Are you ready? Here it is. Don't read your slides. I've said it before in this series. PowerPoint is not a teleprompter. It is not for you to read your slides. Don't read your slides. People will say, like, if all they're going to do is read me the slides, they could have just sent me the deck and I wouldn't have had to attend the presentation. Listen, your slides are a support to you. They're not the message. They're to support the message, right? So a couple things about this. Use what I call the 6x6 rule. If your slides shouldn't have more than 6 words per line and 6 lines on the page. Now, in most PowerPoint or Keystone kinds of tools, if you have more than 6 lines in your body of your slide, the font size is going to start to drop. So another way to think about this, if you're typing along and the font size drops, you have too many words. If you have as many as 6 words in a line, you're more likely to read them. You've been reading sentences since you were 5. So when we see sentences, we read sentences, right? So remember the 6x6 rule. Fewer words will help you to not read your slides. Remember, it's not a teleprompter. It's not a replacement for your preparation. So don't read your slides. Remember the 6x6 rule. And then if you're doing this in a room with people, point your feet towards the people. In other words, face the group. Or the camera. More on the camera in a second. Like if you face the group, that's where your head will be. If you face your feet in the direction of the audience, that's where your head will be. You will turn to look at the slides and your head will come back. If you face the slides, you can turn and look at the audience, but your head will be looking at the slides. And if you're doing this virtually, if you've got a couple of screens, you don't want to look at the slides any more than you have to, so you can look at that camera, which is the equivalent of looking at your audience. Face the group. Don't read your slides. Now, you probably know that doesn't work, and yet you see people do it all the time. Here's the other thing to never do in your presentations, and I say never. Here's what you see people do all the time. They're about ready to be finished, and they say, "Any questions?" Don't do that. Don't close with any questions. There's a variety of reasons why. The biggest reason why is whatever energy, whatever momentum you've built to that point in the group is immediately lost the minute that you ask that question. The minute that you ask that question, people know you're done. They start to pick up their stuff. They start to mentally move on, and you have lost them. In a previous episode of this series, we talked about how to close strong, and it doesn't include by asking people for their questions. Should we ask for questions? Most of the time, yes. But before we close, right? You could even say, so before we close, does anyone have any questions? And then do your close, right? It's got to come, it can't be the last thing, right? So you want to ask, but not at the end. Ask for questions, but not at the end. But notice, in the example I just gave you, I did it differently. I didn't say any questions. I asked expectantly. I want you to ask expectantly. Like, what's the answer to any questions? It's yes or no. I either have them or I don't. Now, we all know what you mean, which is, if you have one, would you share it? So why not ask it expectantly? What questions do you have? Now I'm asking them to share the question, not tell me if they have one. It's subtle, but it's a difference, and it will improve the chances that you will actually get them. So you ask near the end, you ask, what questions do you have, or some variation of that. You answer any questions that you get, and then you close. So 2 things to never do in your presentation. Don't read your slides, and don't end with any questions. So if you do those 2 things, or if you don't do those 2 things, you'll be a far more effective presenter, both for your audience and for yourself. Let me close with today's remarkable reminder. Just because people do it doesn't make it right. Present in ways that work, not just what other people do. Here's something lots of people do. They lead solely based on their leadership style. I would tell you that isn't necessarily helpful. It's one of the many things I talk about in my upcoming book, Flexible Leadership. You can learn more about that book, and you can pre-order your copy by going to this link, kevineikenberry.com/flexible. Why should you pre-order a copy? Well, then you'll be among the very first to have a copy. And by doing that, it guarantees you the lowest possible price at publication. Can't beat that. So best possible price, be among the very first to get these ideas, and it helps me a little bit as well. Hope you'll do those things. And again, kevineikenberry.com/flexible. Hope you'll do those things. And I hope you'll be back with me next week for another episode in this series of Remarkable TV and the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.